their performance hall at Brookhaven College. I'm Tom Chesney, your president. I think most of you know me in that regard, but today we're going to get immediately to the business, hearing from our chancellor, Dr. Jan12. Joe, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chesney, and good morning. Good morning. And really, it's great to be at Brookhaven. I have a feeling I'm going to be moving around more than usual today to keep warm, but it's great to see all of you. You know, I don't care what we do. We are not prepared for this in Dallas when the temperature drops, but it is really great to be here, and I really appreciate letting me spend a little bit of time with you this morning. You know, I want to talk about the Higher Education Network and kind of share with you, which I planned to do back in August, to share some of this when we were coming together as a conference. You may remember I kind of changed that at the last minute based on what had just occurred in Charlottesville, Virginia, and kind of shared some thoughts there. So I want to circle back now and kind of talk with you about why I think this really matters to what we're doing and what we're doing now, and then where we're headed in the future, and get on a little bit of what it is. I'm not sure where the computer is for this, but this seems to work. I want to start by kind of sharing with you a little bit some things that I probably see, but many times you don't see, in terms of what's happening, some attitudes toward higher education. I've been around this business for about 40 years. And over this time, I would say, for most of my career, there has been no entity in our nation held in higher esteem than higher education as a whole, in terms of influence to individuals, to employers, to communities we're served, and to our nation as a whole. But frankly, that's changed, and it's changed dramatically over the last few years, where today we even see about 48% of the population doesn't even believe that higher education is important to them as individuals. 67% of Republicans, and according to a recent Gallup, we're talking really recent Gallup survey, indicated that they have very little confidence in colleges and universities to meet the needs of individuals or communities. Pew Research study last year indicated that 58% of Republicans actually believe that universities and colleges have a negative effect on our country, that we're a negative today as opposed to positive. But it's not just one party. About a third of Democrats believe exactly the same thing. Now, the reasons are different for the two, but these are the people that are determining the policies and the direction. And so how's it affecting policy? Well, pretty dramatically. Back in December, around the first part of December, the first week, Congress introduced the new tax legislation, and all of a sudden, colleges and universities who've never paid any attention whatsoever to taxes, tax law, and the impact that it has, as said here in this headline out of the Chronicle of Higher Education, were suddenly scrambling. Even people who had been part of the Bush administration, like Margaret Spellings, who's now the president of the University of North Carolina system, is doing good grief. These are going to take us completely in the wrong direction. It's erecting barriers at the very time that there are millions of Americans who need more affordable education. Why are we actually taking away some of the incentives in order to make that? One of the things that we also saw as a reaction, this is out of Real Clear Education, that immediately university and college presidents across the nation, 2 year, 4 years, said, what? We didn't see this coming. Which really gets to the disconnect that many in our field have today between what's happening with the general population of opinion and policymakers, and indicating here that they were blindsided by the charges that we're ignoring serving the hardest served, that we're ignoring meeting the needs of economically disadvantaged. And that's really where the Democrats were coming from with a lot of this, saying, you know, you're basically serving the people that are already going to benefit from higher education, and you're not looking at the needs. Now, I wish this was just limited to what's happening nationally. We're seeing exactly the same type of reaction from Texas policymakers. When we look at what happened last spring in the budget setting session, suddenly our colleges and universities were going, wow, it's clear that policymakers no longer respect us. In fact, a recent meeting that I had with all the CEOs of colleges and universities in North Texas just before the holiday break, this was the topic of conversation among the group, and in fact, we're actually organizing how do we begin to share a message about the good work that higher education is actually doing, because that is not the perception that we're seeing in Austin, that we're seeing in Washington, D.C. Today. But it's not even limited to policymakers. Jeffrey Slingo, many of you probably heard him speak. He's been on the circuit for the last few years, the editor-at-large for the Chronicle of Higher Education, our major higher education publication. It's out there, put out the book a couple of years ago on College Unbound, and in it, he describes in detail why he believes America's higher education system is broken, which really ties back into some of the issues that many of the policymakers have as it relates to it. So we'll talk about this today. At the state level, what we've been seeing in the conversation has related to the workforce and the sense by many that we're not doing a good job in providing the workforce that our state needs to continue to grow the economy. This was also, just over the Christmas break, an article in the Houston Chronicle with the headline, Texas lagging badly in educating the workforce. And it goes into detail about the disconnect that they see because only 41% of the overall population of Texas has some type of post-secondary credential. We know that number is much higher. I wish in our area we had 41%. We are lagging the rest of the state. In fact, we're lagging the nation, and I'll talk a little more about this. In fact, it's become employers who are putting pressure on the policymakers have become so frustrated with higher education that they're taking matters into their own hands. You may aware, even locally, AT&T entered into an agreement with Georgia Tech, essentially bought a master's program at Georgia Tech that's exclusively for AT&T, and they designed the curriculum, put in the faculty that they wanted to see there to make sure that they were coming out with the type of knowledge and skills that AT&T needed, and they're guaranteeing not only paying for 100% of it, they're hiring everyone that comes through the program. We're seeing efforts like this take place across the country. Some are creating it on their own. Microsoft, which by the way, we're in this area where we live, is the second largest number of employees in the nation for Microsoft. We're second only to Redmond, Washington, in terms of the numbers that we have here. They're also creating their own pathways because they simply can't find the people that they need in order to grow their business. And this is putting a lot of pressure on policymakers and others, causing people like the Business Roundtable, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to get involved. And why is this a problem? Well, it's really this issue here. While we talk about, and it is a fact, and I'll talk more about this later, that 65% of the jobs in our area require a post-secondary credential. 99% of the new jobs created since 2008 require some type of post-secondary credential. And it's changing at such a rapid rate that the ability to respond to this has led to a great deal of frustration on the part of employers or others. Back to Jeff Slingo, who I mentioned earlier, he put out this op-ed recently, or an editorial, talking about, the only way that higher ed is going to be able to address these needs is a much deeper collaboration. And that universities and colleges need to stop thinking that the only path forward is the one that they take alone. That operating in isolation today is actually contributing to the problem. And the truth is, we cannot do this work alone. in order to meet the needs of employers, of individuals, and what's happening with the rapid rate of change in our communities. So let's look at the specifics here. I want to share with you why I tend to agree that many aspects of the higher ed system across the nation are broken today and are not working very well. In Texas, our coordinating board for higher education set what I would consider a modest goal under the circumstances in which we were operating in the economy, saying that we need to have 60, that because jobs are requiring more post-secondary education, that they said we need to have 60% of our adult population having a post-secondary credential by the year 2030. So 60% of the jobs will require post-secondary credentials. Well, the 60% is wrong. We already know that 65% of the jobs require a post-secondary credential. So even having the goal where it is today is below the reality that we see taking place in our community. And when we look at our area, we expect by the year 2030 that we will grow in Dallas County another 500,000 people over that period of time. And with that, will leave us with 1 million of our population illiterate, unable to compete in the economy as it exists today. So we've got a huge gap when we look at it, and the disconnect between what the skill base of and knowledge of individuals and what we need in our communities is unfortunately growing, not getting narrower as we look at it. So let's take a look at what I think is really the definition of a broken system. When we look at 10 high school students coming out, it doesn't matter which high school, but this is an average across the entire county. Good news, we've seen an increase in high school graduation rates. Now 8.4%, or 84%, or 8.4 out of 10 will actually, who leave 8th grade, come to the 9th grade, will actually, start the 9th grade, will actually graduate from high school in 4 years. So the good news is we're only losing 16% of the population, if that's good news. However, 8.6% aren't ready for college. Or 86% aren't ready for college. 6 out of that 10 aren't ready. Then we go on, 4.1 don't enroll in post-secondary education in their first year out of high school. And when we break this down by race, because race actually matters, this is not just an economic issue, there's clearly a racial divide here, that 4.7 Hispanics don't enroll and 3.9 blacks don't enroll. Then when we look at who does enroll, 5.2 don't persist to a second year in college. 7.3 never earn a degree or credential within a 6-year period of time. So when we look at the data on this, and I put this up, at 7.3 who don't, that represents 73% of the population. So when we look at Dallas County, looking at 2010 data, where we can track back what's happened over the 6 years since those folks graduated, we have the most complete data there. We know that 18,000 out of nearly 25,000 students did not earn any type of degree. And so what we see is that 73%, while our goal is 60% to have a degree, 73% aren't earning one, and only 27% are. Then if you notice something here, we're actually declining. And so the slope in our community is going the wrong direction. Only a few years ago, we had 30%. Now we're down to 27% actually earning a post-secondary credential in 6 years. This tells me that the system in which we're operating is broken and not working in the direction that we all know it's not only necessary, but essential for our community. Then as we look at what happens to folks that are economically disadvantaged, which unfortunately can represent in some of our schools as many as 99% of the students in some of our K-12 institutions, we see that that matters a great deal. So that when we look back at students coming out of an economically disadvantaged background, looking at data that we have here from 2006, there were about 19,000 there. But again, 35% of those did not even earn a high school diploma. So we see that the economically disadvantaged suffer to a much greater extent than others. 61% never enrolled in higher education, and 90% never earned a post-secondary credential. So as we look at the challenges, this was just last week, again, an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education points out that this type of data would indicate that many colleges and universities have actually become engines of inequality or inequity in terms of what they're doing. And this is some of the policymakers' real beefs about higher education today, is that we're serving the easiest to serve, and the more difficult populations are being left behind, and unfortunately in greater numbers. And as this article points out, we're actually following the national trend by seeing that students from differing racial backgrounds and economic backgrounds are actually earning fewer degrees than they have in the past from colleges and universities. And that there are, as it says here, profound imbalances in who actually is getting a degree today, and it's affecting every one of us in terms of our communities and our economy. When we look at it, again, you can look at it by as we just did, the economically disadvantaged, and that certainly tells a story. But race matters as well, and ethnicity matters in these discussions. When we break it out by race and ethnicity, as you recall, we were averaging our 27% earning a post-secondary degree within 6 years. Well, if you're white, you're at 28%, so a little bit better than that. But if you're Hispanic, you're only at 11% and 13% if you're black. So when we look at it, we're seeing not only a divide along economic lines, but a clear divide along racial lines as well. And as we have become now a majority minority community, this matters. So I want to talk about all these challenges and how the network is really designed to tackle these head on, and why it's important that we go this route, why it matters that we're doing this, what are we actually doing, what does it mean, and then what are the next steps forward. So that's what I'm hit on at this point. So let's talk about why I think it's important. I think most of you would agree that the old model of simply waiting until after a student graduates from high school and then they show up for college is too late. We lose people well before this point in time. Right now, when we look at our community, Dallas now has the lowest percentage of adults with a college degree in the nation. We trail everybody in major urban areas today in terms of where we are. And this is affecting half of the population of our community. We're not just leaving people behind, we're leaving entire communities behind and unable to compete. And which is kind of interesting, because where you are, you don't see it, right? What you see are cranes, what you see is road construction, what you see is progress being made from the employer side, and you see growth there, and certainly that's great news. And we are leading the nation right now in terms of that, but we're also leading the nation in how we're leaving people behind in the process. So as we look at where we are and where we need to be, we can see that there's a gap. So as we look at how do we get and increase the number of individuals between the ages of 25 and 34, which is the sweet spot we want to look at, how do we get 60% of those individuals having at least a certificate, an associate degree, or a bachelor's degree by the year 2030? Well, if we stay on our current trajectory, which unfortunately is sloping downward now, tilting just a bit the wrong direction. we're going to be 40,000 credentials short of our goal. And this is assuming, of course, that all these credentials align perfectly with what the needs of the economy are. The actual impact could be even addressed later than that. So we need to increase by about 1.6 times the number of credentials that we're granting across the Dallas County Community College District in order to just be on track to provide 60%, which remember is below what the actual economy needs in order to be effective at that point in time. So as we look, as I just said, right now we've got about 37% of the population with some kind of post-secondary credential, and I have to say a lot of those have been imported into our community. You may be aware that we're creating roughly in North Texas, all in North Texas, 335 jobs every single day. But 395 people a day are moving in to take those jobs. So while we've got that 37%, which is among the lowest in the country, and our jobs are requiring 65% having an education, which, by the way, that breaks out this way. We need about 32% of that group needs a bachelor's degree or higher, 33% need a certificate or an associate's degree. But we already have 29% of this 37% have a bachelor's degree or higher. So where's the gap? Well, you do the math on that one, and where we're short is what our sweet spot and where certificates and associate degrees in order to be able to meet that need. So while we certainly need more bachelor's degrees, the real gap are people with very specific skills in our community, and we talk about this a great deal, the number of jobs that are in the field. So why is it so hard for colleges and universities to respond to these changes? Why has this been happening, and why is the frustration increasing among policymakers and among employers and others that are out there? Because they understand that the game has changed. They understand that the needs of the economy and the workforce have changed completely over the last several years, and that we no longer need, when I graduated from high school, we pretty well knew we only needed about 25% of the population with post-secondary credential because there were great jobs for people with just a high school diploma. Well, that game's gone. It's over. That's simply not the reality anymore. Then we also know that the rules have changed. And I'll talk about what those rules are, about how we engage with companies and individuals. And a lot of that is simply the pace of change that's occurring at an unprecedented rate, meaning that the programs, as one employer told me, if a student starts a program we hope you're revising it by the second semester, because that's how fast we're changing within our companies and in our organizations as we come out. The players have changed. I mean, as I mentioned, we've gone from needing only about 25% of the population needing post-secondary. We've gone from entire companies building their entire business with needing almost no one with an educated background to today almost everyone requiring it. And the workforce and the economy has changed. And we can talk about the history of, as we know, progressing through the agriculture age, the industrial, the into the service, and how we can send this to change. And while there's been some change in higher education, we're not changing anywhere near the speed of business or the speed of the economy and what's happening. So what do we need today? How can we best respond to this? Well, I think that it really ultimately is about leadership and how we have to be relentlessly focused on identifying the barriers that are getting in the way for individuals and transforming those barriers into horizons, so that we're eliminating or almost 100% eliminating friction from the process, because it's that friction that's causing a lot of these individuals who even plan to attend college but never complete not to be through, and removing that for the students and for employers who are trying to access the individuals that get access to the individuals that we have. And so as we understand, everything is changing. As we think about the jobs are changing, technology is changing, laws are changing, culture is changing, everything is always changing. The rules, policy-wise, I've been working in higher ed for 40 years, and I can tell you the last 8 years, we have seen more federal and state policy change than I have in the rest of the other 32 years combined. It's amazing the rate at which we see things happening. The players are changing, both not only faculty, staff, administrators, but the students and who are accessing what they look like. The field of play has changed online. We're more and more into employer workspace, high schools with what we're doing with career academies and others. And all of this is always going to be changing. So what we have to do is really ensure that we're not just focused on the transactions at any point in time and recognizing that, but that we really have vision-based leadership that is looking for the long term, not just what's happening in the short term. And let me talk about this in terms of why I think a network really matters, because when we look at what we've said we want to be in terms of our responsibilities to our community and to individuals, to employers, we call this the DCCCD way. We've said that we have the responsibility of preparing our community to succeed, and that's certainly with the educational services and programs to help grow the economy, to make sure that we are viable, growing, and for the long term, not just for everyone, not just for a few. That we want to help our businesses prosper. And let's face it, that's half of the economy. If we're not seeing small businesses particularly grow, add wealth, add positions, add jobs, then we're not going to be in a successful community as a result of this. So we have to invest and help support those efforts. And if we believe if we get those two right, that we will inspire more people to come to Brookhaven College or other colleges and enroll and take advantage of the programs that we have in place. And if we do that, then we all benefit as a result by having an improved quality of life for everyone, not just right now about half of the population, but everyone can benefit by this. So we need a network. I suspect if we took a few moments here and I asked you to share some stories about what students are facing today, you'd have me in tears in no time, because I know our students are suffering. I talk to them, I hear their stories, I hear what they're going through, and then we're seeing so many fall through the cracks. We know that students that enroll for the first time in the Dallas County Community College District, 18% never finish a single course. Never finish a course at all. That start with. That is the definition of falling through the cracks, and one in which I'll give them some of the reasons. We know a lot of the reasons. I mean, that there are tremendously high percentage of these individuals never get the learning materials, they never buy the textbooks. They're starting at a disadvantage within the system, and they need other help to get there, and we're just not able to provide it. Then we look at a whole group of students that are remarkably successful. And we looked in depth at why they're successful within this. It turns out they're doing something very different. They're not following our advice at all. They, in fact, have created their own network. And these individuals that create their own network are the ones that are moving the fastest for the degree. Actually, they have the shortest time for the degree. They're the most likely to earn a degree. They had the highest GPA among all of our students. They're the most successful when they transfer, and they're the most likely to successfully transfer and graduate from that institution. So, and this is not a small number. In fact, of our graduates, this group of of individuals who are attending multiple institutions at the same time, charting their own course through that, represent twice the number of graduates as any other college within the district. In other words, they're graduating from a specific college, but not because of a specific college in order to get there. And they, as we look at this population, 24,000 of our students fall into this category. They're doing well. Now, the question that I have, can we trust our future and our community's future to a few students building their own network? Or can we be intentional about what we're doing and build a network that creates understanding and navigation strategy for providing those clear pathways for all students? Makes sense. A few figure it out on their own, but too many aren't. And so as we look at the idea of a higher education network, it is with that in mind, and providing both the countywide and local leadership in developing the regional higher education network. And I put leadership in there because it's not about the ability, it's not about the capacity, it's not for a lack of programming. It's a lack of leadership tying it all together, making sure that we're able to provide the talent, the learning, the discovery resources that are needed to fully address the problems faced by individuals, by employers, and by the communities that we serve. And this is really what it's about in a nutshell, as we look at it, that we know that there's a great need there. We're doing great work all across the district and serving individuals. Our colleges are recognized. We regularly have colleges that are selected and nominated for the Aspen Prize. You don't get to apply for that. The Aspen Institute picks you and invites you into that. We have a Baldridge Award winner. We get all kinds of recognition from the Higher Education Coordinating Board and others, and we're very proud, and I'm proud of these achievements. But you know, the problem is sometimes we don't do what we do to win awards. I'm reminded, was with a group of university folks recently, and some university presidents from across the nation, and we were talking about the U.S. News and World Report rankings of universities. You know that edition that comes out every year? And they were explaining their average. They were spending about $15 million a year to improve their rankings. And yet 100% of them said, but the rankings are meaningless. So why are institutions investing so much time and energy and resources in something that they acknowledge has zero meaning in terms of impact to students? And unfortunately, that's kind of what we all get sucked into sometimes. And it's not always clear how some of the recognitions or affiliations, even accreditations. I mean, I can point out and name one specific accreditation that actually does harm to students because of what it does in terms of lengthening their time to the degree and getting a job. You know, and so we need to look at these. How well do they align with our long-term vision, not purely some type of short-term transaction that takes time and energy away from us meeting the needs. So we don't do what we do to win awards. We do what we do to change the lives of individuals. And this only occurs when a student completes a high-value, high-quality credential that ultimately allows them to get a job, allows them to provide for their family, allows them to be engaged in the community in a meaningful way. And this is the place where we want to excel. So as we look at it, I wish I could share with you that we're doing great in some of these areas. And in fact, we're not doing great at all. And while there's some good news, that certainly we do a good job of sharing that through our reports and other sorts of things. There are a few things that we don't talk about publicly. Well, I'm going to talk about them today because unless we begin to understand how we really compare and stack up, I don't think we can really address some of these. So unfortunately, there are really too many places where we are first where we want to be last, and we're last where we would want to be first. And some of these have to do with what happens to students. When we look at our peers in the state of Texas, not even going across the nation, we find that we have the worst 6-year graduation rate of all peers. We're near the bottom in 3- and 4-year graduation rates. We're second to last in transfers to universities. We're dead last in 2-year persistent rates across the entire district. This one boggles my mind. We have the highest average student loan debt of all of our peers, and yet we have the lowest tuition. Collins a bit lower, but not in terms of net, what people pay. So something is not going well, and just in terms of how we're engaging students in this process and allowing them to incur unnecessary debt. And we want to tackle that as well. And we are the lowest in terms of earning and coordinating board success points per FTE of all peers, and that's a long list in this state. So we've got a lot of work to do in order to be where we would want to be in some of these comparisons with others. And I put this up because I do think this adds insult to injury. Right now, going through Congress, through the House, is something called the Prosper Act. Some of you are aware that we operate under a piece of federal legislation called the Higher Education Act, which is supposed to be renewed every 5 years. It actually hasn't happened, hasn't been reauthorized since 2008. But Congress is determined to get this going forward. So Virginia Fox, who's a former community college president, heads up the Education and Human Services Committee in the House. So she's put forth a piece of legislation called the Prosper Act. And frankly, we like a lot of what's in there. So they've listened to us. We've met with them. We've informed that legislation. But there's some things that we kind of wish weren't in there too. And one of them is it relates to Title V and Title III eligibility, and we receive a lot of money from those across the entire district. It's rare that we don't have a couple of colleges, 3 or 4 colleges, getting Title V, which generally are in the $2 to $3 million range, something in that neighborhood. But when they put out the list, there was a group that went back and examined the requirements to be eligible for that, which a big part of it is your graduation rates and how successful students are when they leave, are they getting good paying jobs. There were only 36 institutions in the nation determined to be ineligible, but we had 2 of them in the district. I mean, the odds of that occurring are virtually zero. That's out there. And I'll be blunt with you, the reason why we didn't have more is because it turns out size mass some of the problems that are there. And this is not an individual college issue because, again, remember, we've got people going to multiple institutions that's there. It really is a collective issue that we need to look at because it bothers me that 99% of the institutions in the nation outperform us. So let's say the data's a little bit wrong and there may be some cleanup, but what if it's just 90% that outperform us? Or what if we were only in the bottom quintile, or at the bottom quartile, or the bottom third? We don't want to be in any part of the bottom of the list that's there. And that's the challenge as I look at going forward. How do we really effectively address these needs? So, as I look at this, and I look at our community, I believe that someone needs to step up and take the leadership in solving these problems to help our students be successful. And I determined that if I don't, if you don't, if we don't, I don't know who will. I mean, you tell me, who can take on these challenges that are out there, if not the Dallas County Community College? I don't believe there's anyone else. I don't think there's anyone capable of pulling together the resources and tackling a challenge of this magnitude except us. But I also know we can't do it alone. So the us is about leadership. The us is about how do we bring people together. The us is about a collaborative solution where we create a network of like-minded institutions. And let me tell you, not everyone's going to be like-minded, but I will get into how we're trying to change their minds on this in a few moments. Individuals and other groups that share this common goal. And I believe we're out there. Unfortunately, the higher education model has been somewhat competitive, not collaborative in the past, with institutions seeing somebody else as a threat, wanting to hoard rather than share, wanting to protect rather than to work together. And that has to change if we're going to make a difference, because in fact, that really is the problem. So when we get to this, so what exactly is a higher education network? What is it? And the most basic level is very simple. It's connecting supply, those of you in economics, with demand. It's about meeting the needs of individuals and the needs of the community that are out there. So if we're looking at how we basically take a group of young people, individuals, high school students, high school graduates coming in who need knowledge, skills, and ability in order to go to work and be successful, that's the supply side. The demand are the employers that are willing to both hire, expand, relocate, grow a business that are here on that side. It's simply a network says, let's bring all these together in a way. So a network is about creating and leveraging relationships at the fundamental level, using other people's resources that may be possessed by individuals, by foundations, by institutions, by businesses, by non-governmental agencies, by government itself in some cases, and working together to solve and ensure that the goals of individuals and employers in our community is met. That's it. It's simply identifying all the way through a system what it's going to take to meet the needs. So let's talk specifically about the supply, the individuals that's out there. And we know, I've shared with you the numbers are huge. When we just look at 1 year, we're leaving 18,000 people behind out of our high schools. Multiply that year after year after year after year after year, and it's a staggering number. So the network is really designed with 3 things in mind on this to help with that. We want to really focus in ensuring upward mobility. We know that we have a high percentage of individuals coming out of poverty, and their predicted mobility, we know how to predict what it should be. We want to change that. We want to ensure that we're able to lift people up. Secondly, and related to it, is we must ensure that people have a living wage. That's on us. If we bring individuals in and we're not putting them out with the skills and the credentials and the degree to make a living wage, then we're not going to have a successful community. Now, we've talked about this third one for the entire 40 years. We're all about lifelong learning. But unfortunately, it was passive. It was about sitting back and waiting for someone to come back to us. We didn't establish a long-term, lifelong relationship. We didn't communicate with them on much less a weekly basis. We didn't communicate with them at all. Occasionally, we'd send them a notice saying, "Won't you write us a check to the foundation?" But that's about it. We weren't connected with them in terms of what was going on with their life and their career, what their needs might be, how they may be in a job that's being phased out. So as we look at this today, we're really looking at how do we connect to people very differently, and how do we build the systems that make that happen. And so while certainly coordinating board metrics matter, that's how we get our funding. Accreditation requirements matter. And that's how we are able to maintain our Title IV eligibility and offer aid to students. But I believe it's really these metrics, and I wish accreditors would align more with these, because these are the things that matter the most from a results point of view, how we are changing the community in a meaningful way. So as we look at how we go about this, we also have to look at the demand side of the equation. We know that employers are frustrated that are out there, but we also know they're willing to partner and work with us, but we have to go to them. And this is where, I'll talk more about this, we're challenging our leadership, our presidents, our vice presidents, our deans, or others to reach out and to help make this happen, because in order for our community to continue to be successful, we have to help support economic growth. It's the only way it's going to happen. And the economy can't grow without increasing the knowledge, skills, and ability of the workforce. Our employers have to be able to find talent. You know, when the Dallas Regional Chamber did a recent survey of 2,000 CEOs in North Texas area, number one concern on the list was the lack of ability to find the talent they needed in order to be successful as a business. Number two on the list was the ability to retain the talent that they had, because the shortage was causing other people to steal their valuable employees. And the smaller the company, the more threatened they felt by this, because they didn't have the resources to hang on to their people. Third, right now, as we look north of us, we see an immense expansion of businesses, companies relocating from not only other parts of the country, but from other parts of the world into the area. So we want that to continue. But I can tell you, having been involved pretty directly with helping prepare the Amazon headquarters 2 proposal that went out, it was clear by the requirements, the ability to provide that 50,000 person workforce. By the way, those jobs paid over $100,000 a year each. And now Google is coming out with their own, and they're looking again for 50,000 people that's out there. But the number one issue is your community able to guarantee that we're going to have that workforce in place, and that the community that's best able to meet that needs is probably going to be the one that gets the company located there. So it's number one on the list. You think they're coming here? I don't want for land or lower cost of living or taxes, and certainly all that matters. But that we would lose these if it wasn't for the ability to meet the need. So let's take just a minute and look at what we know about students, and we know a lot that gets in the way of them being successful. And unfortunately, and particularly with minorities, but 90% are not successful in the process. We need to take a deep dive and see what's getting in the way. In fact, we have, and we are, and we're continuing to. I mean, this is frankly, I think back when we were creating our institutional research operations, this is really what we were intending to focus on, is what's happening to people. Why aren't the systems working, and what's getting in the way? Well, we know that there's a large majority of high school students that absolutely don't think about college until the senior year. And frankly, that's simply too late to begin making plans. And I'll talk about what we're doing to change that. The majority who graduate from high school, 86%, aren't academically ready today for college. That certainly gets in the way. We've got the majority also, there is a complete lack of understanding about career and relevant job information. They don't know what the jobs are that are paying great salaries and where the shortages are that are out there, and they're not getting that information in a way that allows them to make decisions about their future. Too many don't even understand at all how to go about enrolling in college. They haven't had a parent to do it. They're not getting help in the school. They get a little bit of shared ignorance from friends. But at the end of the day, too many of them don't make it through that process. And then once they do, they encounter a whole lot of friction there. And when we did our student experience study a little over, 2 years ago now, what we found were as we looked at it, all sorts of friction that got in the way of students moving seamlessly and easily through the system. And then when you're coming out of poverty and economically disadvantaged background, it seems like they encounter many, many, many more unanticipated life events that create barriers and obstacles for them to overcome that even I can comprehend. Some of them make you cry, some of them make you want to laugh, but at the end of the day, it's hurting students, and they're unable to be successful. And then there's the communication piece, which we tend to communicate on our terms, not on their terms. We still do it here. Ask a student how often they check email, and they go, "What's that?" And yet, that's still the primary way we communicate with them as colleges and the district that's there. We're not even collecting the information to use their primary method, which is texting and other types of communication to get that out. So without the communication, without the ability to really support them through a system, we're not able to help. So we have to change a lot of what we're doing and do this in some different ways. Now, historically, what has been our reaction to a lot of these challenges is to blame somebody else. As the poor figure, the middle school folks always blame the elementary folks, and the elementary blame the pre-K, and the pre-K blame the parents, and the high school blames the middle school. We blame the high school, the universities 4 years blame us, and we see how well that has worked to solve the problem. It's left us where we are, or we can decide that we can do something about it, and we can change in some ways that we engage. And these are really the types of challenges that the network is designed to address. It focuses not just on process and systems, but I think the real problem is not that we don't run great programs. We do. It's not that we don't have great people in place. We have amazing people in place. But what we really are terrible at are handoffs between systems. The transitions between systems have so much friction in them that people simply give up trying to get through it. And it's everywhere in the system. The number of people that are lost between an 8th grade and a 9th grade is staggering. The number that are lost between 12th grade and college is just incredible. It's the majority get there. And then when we get in, we look at just transferring between 2-year and 4-year institutions, also problematic. That's there. And then trying to get people into a job breaks down as well. So here's what we're doing now in trying to address this. As Dr. Chesney knows, we're bringing the presidents together and we're asking them to collaborate across institutions in ways that we've never done before as a district. That one-off and doing things a separate way that don't integrate and allow those individuals that are going to multiple colleges at the same time, that have created their own network, to be able to engage in the system in a meaningful way. We've got to make sure that we're working together toward a common goal, not individual goals. We're now working on guided pathways, so that, and not just with us, but going back into the high school. And we're going to be tying into the universities, because again, we can't do it alone, not by a single college, not by a district. That's not enough as we get there. So we're reaching out and extending it. We've created this a number of brand new positions called navigators. These are individuals that will be institutionally agnostic. Their job is to be the lubrication of the network. Their job is to help people that come in our doors and get them, help identify the pathways so that they can get from wherever they are to what they're trying to accomplish, even if it's not at one of our colleges. We want to serve their needs, not institutional needs. Then we're doing things like what we're calling My Community Services, linkages there with white label that AnEmpoweredHour on the webpage. AnEmpoweredHour is a company out of Austin that allows us students to anonymously discover if they need food, housing, transportation needs, child care needs, legal assistance, if they're in an abusive relationship, whatever may be going on, and there's free or low cost help available for them. They can go on our webpage, at your webpage, there, enter confidential information and find out what's available near them. They can do it by address so that they don't have to drive all across the community to get mental health services or legal help if that's what they need. We're fortunate here at Brookhaven with the extension of the dark passes to all students being eligible. You've got great service here. Not all of our colleges have great service, but that's a real benefit, and enabling students. And by the way, help students make sure the importance of getting this done. It's too late when their car breaks down, and then they decide to go through the process to apply. We're looking at the need to revise policies. When students are going to multiple colleges at the same time, it's fine if one institution is tracking attendance and reporting them in a way that allows us to intervene in the process, but we need a database that's looking at what's happening concurrently across all colleges involving individuals so that we can intervene and provide the support that they need. If they're enrolled in 4 classes and we see that they've not attended one and the next day they miss another, we need to get them before they get themselves in trouble in all of their classes and make that happen. We also need to look at feedback and grades. You know, I'm amazed when I talk to students that found themselves in trouble, indicating in some cases they had no idea because no one had told them about how they were performing until the end of the term, and making sure that this happens. And then finally, what we're doing, you've probably seen a great deal on this, the Dallas County Promise. And I want to spend quite a bit of time here just talking about what that is and what it's not. It is the absolute embodiment of merit. Let me be clear what it's not. It is not a scholarship, and it's not about attending college free. It's really about addressing in a network manner the real challenges that we see. And so I kind of want to walk through what this is and how it's working. It really is a network of high schools, of colleges, of universities, of employers, of nonprofits, of individuals working collaboratively in a way, frankly, that's not happening anywhere in the country. There are over 200 Promise programs now operating in the U.S., and this is the only one that was started by an institution of higher education system. Every other one was started because employers got so fed up that they decided that they had to create something out there to address it. Or in the case of Tennessee, a governor did the same thing and said, you know, what's happening is not working, we're leaving too many people behind. Or chambers of commerce or foundations or others. But we really realized that we can do something and we can make a difference. And the promise is about one thing and one thing only. And that's eliminating barriers and removing friction between the transitions between higher education institutions and ultimately employment for folks. And it's about ensuring that we have available a network of financial, educational, and business resources that can ensure that every single student can succeed. So I kind of want to just take a moment and walk through some of the requirements of this. And right now we have 31 high schools. Well, what do those 31 high schools have to do? Now, about 23 of them I would consider promise. Some of them got in before we had the more rigid criteria for getting in. But what we expect is that in order to be part of the network and part of a promise school, they have to agree as a school that to help students coming out of the 8th grade to take the necessary steps to begin to prepare them to be successful in college. In fact, we're working with a not-for-profit that's training 8th grade teachers to be able to better start to talk to students, their students, about the need to go to college and what it's going to take to prepare and get ready for that. We ask that every school district have some sort of a boot camp between the 8th grade and 9th grade year that really focuses on preparing students for success going into the 9th grade, because we lose so many people during that bridge year that we want to make sure that they have that opportunity. And that during the 9th grade year, we asked that along with their other studies that they're doing, that we focus like a laser on providing intense support to increase their reading skills. And let me tell you, our first cohort finished last year. We pre and post test with a TSI. They scored double these ninth graders that, by the way, were majority at risk, scored double what our incoming scholars freshmen score on the reading section. This year, for the sophomore year, we focus on writing. 11th grade year, we focus on mathematics. During that time, we also asked them beginning in the 11th grade year, they don't have to put in an early college, high school, or P-TECH or career academy. But we do ask that they make available at least 15 semester credit hours, allow us to do that, of college credit in order to be eligible, because we know that students who earn college credit while in high school, now I can tell you, we also know that if they earn an associate's degree, they are highly likely to go ahead and complete the bachelor's. Each year, these students receive mentorship from business partners. And by the way, you may not be aware, these businesses are actually putting offices in the high schools today. American Airlines has 10 full-time people at Allenson High School working with our collaborative effort there. They also agreed to provide internships that are available during the 11th and 12th year. These are not simply advisory, these are fully engaged. Then we get to, during the senior year, as part of the Dallas County Promise, we asked that the students complete a pledge that indicates that they will go to college. We have a January 31st deadline for that with our first group. We're right now at 80% there, and we've got not just schools working on it, entire communities. I happened to be at a community town hall meeting in Oak Cliff last night with a group of people that are out engaging not only with students, the schools, to make sure that they commit to the Dallas County Promise. Then we asked that by March 31st they complete the FAFSA line, because it turns out, we've done the analysis of what factors most determine whether or not a student will enroll in college. It's not previous high school work. It's not whether they're from an economically disadvantaged background or not. It's about simply that they complete the FAFSA during their senior year. If they complete it, then they are highly likely to enroll in college. If they don't complete it, they are almost guaranteed they won't enroll in college. And there's zero correlation when we look at why one high school is getting 50% and another 10% FAFSA completion. It's simply a matter of putting the time and energy. And while we spend millions of dollars to make that happen in the district, we haven't impacted this in 30 years. It's been stuck at around 40%, even though we know that 81% of the high school seniors are eligible under this. So this is important when you complete that. And then they must enroll in college during their senior year. We don't want them to wait to graduate. You do all those three things, then we guarantee that the remainder of your undergraduate education is free if you're either coming to one of the district colleges or with one of our four-year partners, which right now includes UNT Dallas. They're in 100%. SMU has said, while we don't want that number of students from Dallas, we want some from the north and some from the east and some from the south and some international coming in, we will set aside a block of scholarships just for the Dallas County Promise, and we will guarantee that those students can attend at no cost. Prairie View A&M joined in this week. Texas Southern is almost ready to sign. That'll happen next week. Midwestern State has reached out and said we want to be a part of it. We're talking to TWU, UT Dallas, and I'll get to what our goal here is in a few moments. Then the other part of this is the employer interactions. I mentioned they have put up offices now in our schools. They're engaged not in it just the old advisory committee way, but really engaged and working together with mentorships, internships, and real input into the curriculum, pedagogy, career pathways, really pointing out what it's going to take for individuals to move through and to be able to get a job. And if they're doing it, then of course these folks are investing. They're hiring. they're going to be hiring these students when we get out. So we need this type of network, frankly, of employee engagement, not just for what we're doing with the Dallas County Promise, but we need it for all of our programs to make sure that we're meeting and keeping pace with the changing needs. So as we look at the needs of employers, this really requires that we continue with high-quality credentialing opportunities that most important align with the workforce needs. Now, we've created a labor market intelligence center that we're looking at this. Some colleges are up to half aligned with the, of our 7 or half aligned with the needs of the economy, but some are as low as 20% aligned, meaning that we're really not putting our resources toward what individuals need or toward what the local economy needs. And so part of our responsibility is going to be how do we align and make that happen. We intend to enter into more promise agreements with universities, including as a part of this, one of the requirements is they must share data back to us. And right now, that's been a real barrier. We've not understood clearly what happens to students when they leave us. And unfortunately, we have indicators of how badly it goes because when a student completes in the Dallas County Community College district-wide, and are ready to transfer, only 12% do at the point that they have met the requirements and need to transfer. Only 12% do immediately. Half ultimately will, and generally after repeating courses and doing things. That's why the average student in Dallas County Community College District transfers with 97 semester credit hours is because there's so much friction in the process that they end up having to do it. So you can imagine you have to be pretty determined to get all ready and then suddenly have to come back and do more work. So what we're going to be doing with these agreements is frankly leveraging the fact that we're kind of the 800-pound gorilla. That we've got 70% of the students, and that these universities will agree to align with our pathways and work together. We want to give preferential treatment. We want to encourage our students to go there and frankly stay away from the ones that aren't helpful, that aren't willing to share data, that aren't willing to provide that. And so these universities that we're talking to, frankly, the ones that we just signed up reached out to us. We didn't really have yet. When we started this was a soft launch of the promise. We actually aren't doing the official launch until May 2nd of this year. So as the word has gotten out, folks have responded. We're building the engine right now to get out and enter into these agreements. So as we look at what a successful higher education network looks like, it's not just what we do, it's what everyone's doing. It means that we want all high school graduates to be college ready at the point that they graduate. That's the ultimate goal that we have. We want all high school students to begin to pursue a career pathway in the 9th grade and understand the importance of that. And we want this engagement and partnership with businesses starting in the 9th grade, but also colleges and universities as well. We want all high school students to complete at least 15 semester hours before they graduate so that they, in fact, can be part of the ongoing economy where we know 99% of new jobs require education beyond high school. And we want all graduates to commit and to attend and to ultimately to complete either a certificate, an associate degree, or a baccalaureate degree as the very minimum. What we want to do is hit 75% of high school seniors completing the FAFSA. If we do that, we will be first in the nation. We will be leading the nation to make this happen, and I believe this will change the trajectory of thousands of individuals who aren't going to college now and will make that happen. We want at least 90% of students who enter a transfer program at one of our colleges to actually successfully transfer and earn a baccalaureate from a baccalaureate granting institution. And let me just comment on that one because I mentioned half ultimately do. This means that they spent years and thousands of dollars getting ready and then never successfully transferred to the institutions. We know what happens to them, and it's a tragedy. It's one thing if you prepare for a technical career, you can get a job with that, but unfortunately, our transfer degrees only qualify you to transfer. And so those individuals that have end up living a life of poverty. We know their salaries, we know their income, and we know what's happening to them. And it's an absolute disservice to get them there and not to figure out how to get them into to the next step. We want at least 60% to graduate from college within 6 years of high school graduation with a high value, high quality certificate or degree that aligns with market needs. We want at least 80% of our completers to improve their predicted mobility. We know what, from where they grow up, we can predict what their life is going to look like. But we can change that trajectory, and that's really isn't what we're ultimately about, to change lives in a meaningful way so that they don't have to live the lie that they look like they were destined to live without our intervention. And we want 100% of the students to be prepared to enter the workforce, because ultimately that's how they're going to meet their needs and our needs as well. So what is our role? Well, I believe our role is one of leadership. And that we have to be the one that guides the network to bring together the individuals, the employers, the community, the resources that are needed, and that we leverage those resources just like we're doing. I mean, you know, we as I mentioned, American Airlines putting 10 people at Adamson High School to support the IT partnership that we have with them. That's part of that early college high school, what that one looks like. They're leveraging their resources in order to help us be successful in this. Two, we need to influence the improvement of diversity. You know, when we talk about upward mobility and we talk about the inequity that's occurring today, when we look at the graduates from not only our colleges but others, the only way we can change this is by working collaboratively to make this happen. And then we need to ourselves be relentless in terms of our focus on removing all friction from all processes and all systems that are interfering with students being successful, that are contributing to them not completing courses or not persisting into the second year, helping them overcome this. And we're going to continue to work on many of these that we know we need to address. And frankly, to use our size and influence to ensure that partners want our students, employers want our graduates, and we want to be able to leverage that in a way to make sure that they join our network and commit. Because we're in the midst, I believe, of a true change in higher education. You know, when community colleges started out, they were really merit-focused. By that I mean they looked just like the universities, those that were transfer-oriented, or they provided skills, but the goal was still to weed people out so that only a few would get through and earn the degrees, because we only needed about 25% of the population. DCCC came along and created one of the first comprehensive community college systems that all this together in one place. But I believe now we're in the age where we have to look beyond something called a comprehensive college. That's a do it alone. That's a approach. We can't do it all, and we can't do everything, but we can lead, and we can provide that leadership to bring together the talent, the learning, the discovery resources that individuals, that employers, and communities need in order to be successful. So I was going to map out what the whole network looked like today, and the complexity of it is already such with 31 different networks operating. But you get a sense here that the students start out in Dallas Independent School District, as an example. Of course, we work with others, at one of the high schools. They begin to work with us to improve the skill level that's operating under the Promise program. The Promise program kicks in to help provide support and the resources to get them through that transition into college. They come to Brookhaven or one of our other colleges that are here, and perhaps they go to work, or they transfer to one of our partners, whether it's now SMU or UT Dallas. They did that, but we maintain that entire relationship, and we provide the leadership to keep all these working collectively together in a way that benefits the individual and ultimately the employer. So as we look at We now have 31 examples of just this type of network that's out there. That's not enough. There are 107 high schools in Dallas County. We want all 107 to be a part of the network. Whether you're a public school, whether you're a private school, whether you're a charter school, we need everyone to be in. But we also need more businesses to join the network. Even if we hit our goals there, we're still going to struggle to meet the needs of the workforce. We must expand the workforce to meet the overall demands of our community. And frankly, we need you. We need our college leadership to be identifying new partnership opportunities, not just occasionally, but as a regular part of our jobs. That's the task that I put on presidents today, that a big part of their job is to identify and to help bring those together, but that's not enough. You're involved also in churches and civic organizations and other groups, and you have the chance to hear about these ideas of things that we haven't even thought of yet. And certainly we need our presidents and others and VPs and deans leading this effort, but we need everyone thinking about what we can do and how we can bring more people to be a part of it. So as we look at what's next, as I mentioned, we want 170. We want a minimum of 12 universities. We want a minimum of 200 colleges to be a part of our network. We're also working to bring in other social services and agencies. I spent last week on the phone. I can tell you, I believe we're going to be able to enter into an agreement with UT Southwestern to make expanded mental health services available at all of our colleges. As you know, we've been in the DART partnership. We've now entered into an agreement with the North Texas Food Bank. I was just on the phone this morning with the folks at Temple University prior to coming here about what we can do to expand emergency aid. We're looking at making sure that students have all the learning materials the day they enroll in a course, not have to make a separate transaction to make that happen. So there's a lot that we're going to be going on. But fundamentally, 107 high schools, 12 universities, 200 businesses need to be a part of it. And we need the engagement of all of us in seeking these new relationships so that we can improve the upward mobility and trajectory of our community. And we also, this year, we're going to be fully implementing our navigation system. And we want to partner with any organization that can help us more fully meet the needs of our students, as I just described. So, one of the things that I'm always struck with, and as some of you know, I started out as a counselor. I was a director of counseling, providing those services, providing advising. You know what? And I realized in that role, you can't do it alone. You can't do it alone as an individual. We can't do it alone as a college. No one can handle this alone. And it really does require us to look at our relationships, our connections, our support systems, finding partners that can help us, and leveraging other resources to move forward. Frankly, if we try to do it alone, we're just not going to have resources, and we'll continue to see the same results. Or if you're an individual, you're just going to burn out. You can't do it all to make it happen, but collectively we can support each other. And I am asking you, if you have ideas, share these with your leadership. Share them with me. Because I will say this, one of the things that we've also learned, while there's some doors that a dean or a president can open, there's some that only I can open, that we're dealing with some folks. And I'm making myself available to really lead those efforts where we need to engage and make that happen. So feel free to let me know, because your engagement is absolutely critical to and frankly, the future of our communities is at stake. It doesn't even look good right now where we are and in the direction in which we're heading, and only collectively can we. So as we look at this, and I've shared this, my thoughts on this to a lot of people over the last probably 4 to 5 months, that in 40 years of higher education for me, I have never been more optimistic about our ability to meet the needs of individuals, of employers, of our community. I've never been in a place where I was so sure that we could make that type of impact and really change the trajectory of people and of communities. Because I do believe we've got the right colleges, we've got the right people in place, we've got the leadership that understands it and cares about it. We have a community like no other. I've had the pleasure of working in some great places and live in some great places, but I've never been anywhere where I see civic leaders reaching out saying, how can I help? I share something with you. I had lunch this week with one of the largest employers in the United States, the CEO of that group. Now, he shared quietly with me something. He said, Joe, our headquarters has been in Dallas since the beginning, but we're worried. We're worried about the mentality of South. He said, now, he's actually stepped down from the CEO role, dedicating 100% of his time to improve education, because he said, I realized that if we can't change this, he said, our company will move its headquarters. He said, and the trajectory we're on right now, we'll be gone. We'll be out of here in 10 years. And so it's serious. We've got a supportive community that wants to help, but they also are hedging their bet just a little bit in terms of that doesn't work out. We've got great partner high schools. Quite honestly, that's remarkable to me. I've been wanting to engage with high schools like this for a long time, and it hasn't been easy to find willing partners. But I think with the Dallas County Promise, we've now had some leverage to make that grow faster. And the same thing with universities. Universities, frankly, hardly ever want to collaborate, except on their terms. And now we're able to change those conversations and to make that happen. We've got employers skeptical at first, but willing to engage, because most conversations start, we've tried to help education before, it just never worked out, and tried to engage. But they're now doing it, and now they're telling their stories, which is attracting more businesses to be a part of it. We have the resources through Rising Star. We're just blessed here that we're able to do this. Our new Level Up Scholarship, which, by the way, we just kind of did a soft announcement of it. Tell you what that's going to do, I haven't talked about this, is that Level Up is for adults only. And we're raising $20 million through our foundation to make that happen. We were at Grand Prairie High School meeting with the school board last night. I wasn't there, but our folks were, saying what we want is to go for a scholarship to parents of the students who are in our early college high schools and who are in the schools in the Dallas County Promise, so that they can go back, and we're going to offer them programs in areas where there are unfilled jobs in Dallas County paying $24 an hour or higher, and partner with the employers in that process. So really create intergenerational relationships within these schools. And I believe that this network approach, like I would just describe, is a solution to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to succeed. That's really what it's about. And I was going to say thank you before I skipped it, but I do thank you. And let me tell you, I wouldn't be here today, I wouldn't be talking about this, I didn't have 100% confidence in you and what we're doing in the classroom, and our ability to help students succeed, and our ability to work with our partners. You've been a real leader in helping us do that. And this is one of the reasons why, because of you, I'm so optimistic about our ability to go forward and meet the needs. So thank you so much for what you do here. It's great to see you, and I'm looking forward to an outstanding semester in New Year. Thank you very much.
Please give our chancellor another round of applause. He mentioned in one of his last slides the importance of having the right people, and that's you that are making this happen. We're going to extend our remarks just a bit. We've had a panel of your colleagues who've been part of this since the beginning. They're working in network ways, maybe over the course of years, or in some of the more recent undertakings that we have. We want to hear from them before we depart. So we're just going to delay our restart a little bit, because I think it's really important to hear from those who are doing this right now. I got one simple question for my 6 colleagues that are here. We're just going to start down the line with Erica in a minute. And that's talking about the work that you're doing, maybe some of the challenges, and what are the rewards of taking part in these network initiatives. So Erica, start us off.
So in my position as Dual Credit Coordinator, I work specifically with our early college high schools. Some of the challenges, kind of like Dr. May was saying, is population that we work with. So with the early college high schools, they have benchmarks that they have to meet to be designated as an early college high school, and one of those is specifically for at-risk populations. So working with that population and getting everyone involved to kind of understand what that entails, the different support and resources that has to be in place with that. Another big challenge can be communication. There's a lot of people that are involved throughout the district as well as throughout Dallas ISD, so it can be tough to make sure you're communicating with the right person and that 6 months down the line, they remember what was communicated or that they receive that actual information. And on the flip side, there are also a lot of rewards. So just being able to talk to the students, to hear the things that are going on. I know at TJ specifically, there are cohort 1, our current 10th graders, of one of the pathways, about 40 students in the business administration pathway, and 30 of them were able to receive their first Skills Achievement Award, which is great to see, and the excitement from those students. So just being able to see them kind of get the excitement from them being a part of the early college schools.
Thank you. Craig, you're teaching at Turner.
I teach at early college high school, and it's got its challenges and struggles. It's new for us, it's new for them. Like any endeavor, we're going to have that, but I haven't seen it any more than anything else a new endeavor. The rewards, for me, outweigh any of the struggles that we face. I mean, I get a kick out of teaching students in high school about computer science, and computers and PCs and all the stuff, the smartphones and everything. And on top of that, they're being taught all of this by a grandfather, which is something they don't suspect, but many don't realize that it's my generation that gave us Palm and personal computers and internet and the smartphones. Palm is the first thing. No, that's a very good point. Everything kind of happens. So it's just been great. We have a lot of talent here that helps with early college high schools and our collegiate academy.
Patty Burks has represented the faculty of the entire district and the early college high school scale-up of Dallas ISD. Patty, share with us.
I think one of the great challenges is that we are dealing, especially right now, in these first couple of years with very immature students, and some of them are coming straight out of the 8th grade into a college course, and they are not really college ready, we know that. And so part of our challenge as faculty is how do we help those students be successful in a college course while not compromising our academic standards. And so we're finding that we may need to provide a little more structure than we would in a regular college class, or we may need to go into a little more explanation because maybe they don't have the vocabulary or the critical thinking skills, and so that, it may take a little longer, take a little more resources to get them there. But that certainly has been one of the challenges. Another thing is really talking about accountability. We really hold our students accountable for their own success, and we provide the guidance, the tools, the resources, but they are responsible. And at the high schools, they really hold, to a large extent, the teachers and the administration responsible for student success. And so trying to help move them along the line, move them up the learning curve, and help the students learn that they need to take responsibility for their own success and put forth the initiative that they need in order to be successful. And as far as rewards, in addition to obviously any student success is a wonderful reward for us, but I think the relationships that we've built with the high schools are really starting to pay off, and we're starting to better understand where the students are coming from as they come to us, and learning a lot from them as they learn from us as well.
Thank you. Vernon Hawkins to my far right has the oversight leadership for our continuing education, workforce development, economic development as well. Most recently recognized with a $367,000 skills development fund grant that will impact the lives and careers of about 267 employees in the highlight court. We're also just received word that a $900,000 grant is going to support incumbent and new workers, almost 1,000 of them at Thomson Reuters. Again, a local area employer that is looking to fill up their needs with our students, our graduates. You're doing so much more than that. What do you want to spotlight in terms of how your area is responding as a network?
I think I want to spotlight one of the true network programs of this district, and that's we know it as, or you may know it as the Adult Educational Literacy Program, but that's the grant that funded, it actually was rebranded Work Ready U, and I think Work Ready U is a better name for it because it really has three components, and that is that those who come in, of course, we're working to get them into the job market, which is what we do in our area. Or we're working to get them into certificate programs or into associate degree programs. Now, the main component of this program is from the start was as a GED or high school equivalency program, but some of the other areas that a lot of people don't know about is that anyone who comes to this college who is deficient in math, English, writing, can actually be serviced through this particular grant, which means that we can use this as an opportunity to have students get graded funding. In other words, you can still go through Pell and go through your developmental classes and go to start your program, whatever you want to do, but then you can come through the Work Ready Youth program and get career navigation, have career navigation opportunities, or the career pathways that are assigned to that particular area. And right now at Brookhaven, we're working with the BOSS program to have a cohort of students going through the BOSS program, and also a cohort of students that are actually going to finish in March, our first cohort in patient care technician. Now, what we're telling students is those patient care technician students, they want to be nurses, but they have a little developmental work to do and some learning courses before they can even get admitted. So what they're doing is they're becoming patient care technicians. They'll get their certificate, they'll go into the job market in March, and they'll be able to work while they're working towards going through the nursing program. We haven't said, don't stop your dream of getting your credit degree. We're telling them to go through Work Ready U while you're working toward your credit degree. It's different than I think what we've always thought. We've always thought, go get your GED, then jump over to do an academic program. Well, we're looking at more holistically. It is using a graded funding approach, what we call a graded curricular approach. Notice I didn't mention anything about credit or non-credit. Because some programs may be credit, some certificates may be non-credit. So this is what Work Ready U AEL is all about. The other part of that is, let's see, what are the outcomes? Well, let me give you an example. Last year, we were supposed to have 900 students come through. Brookhaven itself we did 1,100, or right at 1,100. This year, we're supposed to do 1,100. We're on tap to do about between 12 and 1,300 students. Now, the first thing is, oh, great. Well, the issue that tells you there's a lot of people out there that have literacy issues. That's just a tip. We have 7 other colleges who also have metrics that they're making this too. They held accountable for making as well. Biggest thing, and maybe the last thing, what does it mean? It means, of course, economic development, because each one of those students didn't have a job. It also allows us to provide hope to those who are maybe hopeless, maybe hopeful. And then the other thing is that in the final assumption for me is that we're changing lives. We're directly impacting and changing the lives of our students, whether they be in Brookhaven, whether they be throughout the different districts. Because we can't do it alone. If I may take one more second, the career navigation piece, we have to work with Dominique there to get that going. To train our instructors to be able to do what they do, we're going to be working with Tiffany there, Tiffany Douglas there. So each one of to do the BOSS program, we had to go to Gail Wilson and Gerard Polite in order to work on the curriculum for that. So this is not one of those things that is burning or is burning through. this is a whole campus, it's a whole district. And I can go outside of that and say, we have other industry partners we're working with, because guess who's going to hire the people that we're working with on those grants that Tom talked about. So this is, like I said, one of the great network opportunities this district in Brookhaven College has been involved with.
Thank you very much. Vernon mentioned the words hope and opportunity. Vince Wagner has been working for years to tell one of the original network ideas, the Rising Star program. Share with us that experience.
We talk about challenges. The challenges were, at the very beginning of the program, to get the contacts to the high schools. It's been going on for 18 years. I've been doing Rising Star for 17. So we've worked through a lot of those challenges as far as the processes and working with the high schools. The rewards have been enormous working with high school students in the Rising Star program. First thing, Rising Star belongs to everybody. Everyone in this room had a piece of Rising Star. They've touched a Rising Star student, even though no one who works directly with Rising Star. The whole campus has been involved. The whole district has been involved. The rewards have been incredible, not only from the small point where you get to actually tell the high school students, yes, you get to go to school, it's paid for. It's seeing how this has blossomed over the last 17, 18 years, and how it's really, truly, the Rising Star program is affecting the community. You can go out there in our community today and see where former and past Rising Star students who have graduated from Brookhaven with certificate programs through either continuing ed or the credit side, and have gone on to the workforce or have gone on to the university. The most important thing I've seen with Rising Star, and one of the main things that they wanted to achieve, was to not only bring more students in from high school in Dallas County to get them certified or get a degree, but they're going back into the community and working by the truckloads. Those are the rewards that we can see that's affecting Dallas County. In a very small part, Rising Star's been doing what Dallas Promise wants to do, but on a bigger scale. We've been doing this for 17 years. On a smaller scale that we have, it works. The reason why it works is because everything that they were saying reflects on it. Rising Star, we do the case management, the one-on-one advising, the face-to-face interaction, leading them through the whole system so there isn't all the friction that was discussed earlier. Getting them to know all the people that are up here on stage and in this audience, to know that they are there to help throughout the whole process. And again, the biggest reward is seeing how not only a student is benefited from this, but how that student's accomplishments have benefited their families for future generations, and that stays in Dallas County. One great example, I have hundreds of examples, and again, we have Rising Star students that are at the universities. We have higher retention rates, higher transfer rates, higher graduation rates than all the other students in the DCCC. So this program does work. You see them when you go to your medical offices. We've had numerous Rising Star students who are now working in the medical industry or the fields. Pharmacists, when we go to CVS or Walgreens, some of those pharmacists may be past Rising Star students. One of the incredible things that I've seen here is working with one particular student from years ago, and now when I go to R.L. Turner, she's one of the associate vice principals there. So this program does work. The rewards are incredible, not only for the students, but for the community of Dallas. And I'd like to think that with this Dallas Promise, we're just kind of taking the next step that Rising Star started.
And the network that includes guided pathways to success, GPS, many of you involved with that, redesign of academic advisory, navigation, career planning, and placement has been involved in significantly in recent years. Dominique McCarthy is going to have the last word. She's going to speak to that.
So one of the changes that has occurred that I'm most excited about because I work in career development is that this last semester, Brookhaven ran a pilot where all of our first-time in college students were required to complete a career assessment and then attend one of our career assessment interpretations where we provided them with their results, in addition to providing them with an overview of guided pathways to success and explaining to them what it is. Once they leave the session, and prior to leaving the session, they have identified what career pathway they belong to, have identified what their top 3 major choices are, and then that way they can sit with their academic advisor and continue the conversation on what their goals are while they're here with the district and beyond that. One of the things that I can say is, of course, students have been a little disgruntled that there's an additional step that they have to take. So we've seen students that have been completely lost have guidance at the end of our session and have an idea of what it is they actually want to do. And then for those students that come in saying, yes, I already know what I want to do, why do I have to sit through this session? I've seen many of them get completely excited when they read through their reports and receive that validation because the career option that they've chosen is listed on their report. I think that establishing, or students being able to establish their career options and establishing their top major choices on earlier on in the process provides them with not only focus, but additional motivation to persist and continue and complete their programs of study.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you all to all of our panelists. We appreciate the way you put some bookends on Dr. May's remarks. Colleagues, please join me in thanking our panelists. We are saying nothing if not flexible, so we had to play with our time and your time today. I respect that. I appreciate that. I had a few other things I wanted to do and say this morning. You may be relieved to know that I will save those for another time. I have some messages to send out. That's okay to say yes, we agree. One of our great partners, and Vernon could have mentioned many. We had a lot of things we could have added. One of them happens to be Amazon. They are big and local and growing in this area. Yes, we might even be ready to welcome them as second headquarters here if we could do that. Some of you probably came today because Amazon showed up somewhere in the invitation. And I'm going to take a moment to stay in your seats for just a moment. And we're going to see who's going to take away a $125 Amazon gift card. So this is going to be in row B, which is, I believe, the second row in front of me. If you're in row B, I think this is a Mavs game, they'll give you your section first. Seat 8. If you look down and you're in seat 8, do not move into seat 8. Rather than saying a lot of individual stuff, I want to show you some collective efforts. Vince talked about it. Every rising star is our student. Every success story is our success. We get to that by taking on the challenge and share with us, by assisting and acknowledging resources. We have two basic goals, I think, that is those of us who get directly serve students and those of us who support what is being done. Makes those kind of outcomes happen. I am grateful that I get to work at a place where, by and large, almost every day and almost every moment, under some of the most difficult circumstances, whether it's 23-degree weather, or just the tension of having to serve and help and work with so many, we do it with respect and care and always with those kind of outcomes at the forefront of our mind. The work is big, it is by no means yet done, and we've got the right people to do it. If you make one note to yourselves about one of the big undertakings that is going on right now, many of you have provided insight already, you might just make a note to yourself. On January 24th and 25th, a message will follow. You'll have an opportunity to spend some time on either one of those days and kind of a show and tell, a discovery session about our campus master planning project, that vision of those needs of community and students and us that will propel Brookhaven College forward. So look for a message in your email very soon about having that chance to come over and see what our consultants, our architects, the researchers, and others have brought to us to tell us kind of where we are, where we could be going. We need to continue to hear from you, your comments, ask some questions on either of those 2 days. Take your lunch and carry it with you over in the Miles building if you want. But carve out just a piece of your day on either the 25th or the 24th of this month of January to engage with or re-engage with that master planning process that will ensure that we are the institution that finds people when and where they need us most and transforms their lives through higher education. Welcome back to 2018, to Brookhaven, and to serving our students, which we're running a little late behind on, so let's go do that together.